Is more news on the way for Indiana football in the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thank you so much for being here. Truly making Locked On Hoosiers your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. We're going to look at the Big Ten standings currently in college basketball, plus bracketology, where Indiana is finally back in the mix. Are they in the field as of right now? We'll have that for you coming up in just a little bit, and how the game coming up tonight between Indiana and USC could affect all of that. We'll dive deep into that matchup as the Hoosiers host the Trojans for the very first time. But we start today's episode with the transfer portal for Indiana football, a conversation that we've had a lot of interest in and a lot of topics on and a lot of news about for Indiana in the winter portal cycle. Well, that cycle has come to a close for any player that hasn't graduated, right? For any player that's not currently playing on a playoff team, the portal is closed. Nobody else can enter, right? There's no more breaking news of people entering the portal. But let me be clear, anybody that is still in the portal currently can still commit to go play somewhere. Problem is, you're running out of time to do that because classes have already started at some places or will be getting started early next week. A lot of places starting on Monday. I believe that's on the 13th. So you're running out of time to commit somewhere if you're currently in the portal, but you won't see any more people enter it until after spring practice. And so the question for Indiana is more news on the way? Could Indiana add more players in this cycle? They could, right? We're at 83 scholarship players as of this recording. And you have to say that nowadays. And whether it's a podcast or an article or a video, whatever the case may be, because things change by the minute. You know this about the transfer portal. And so as of right now, Indiana has 83 scholarship players. They've brought in 16 through the transfer portal this cycle through the winter. And I know we've had people complaining about not showing up in the rankings, but according to 247, Indiana's portal class is ranked 15th in the country. I had to double check and make sure that that was correct, but it is. And Indiana's transfer portal class this winter cycle was ranked 15th in the country. Highlighted, of course, by Fernando Mendoza, who's going to be your starting quarterback in 2025. You bring in what you think could be a starting running back, what you think could be some starting receivers, 2 offensive linemen who will start for you in 2025, and a bunch of dudes on the defensive side of the football. And so the question now becomes, could Indiana add more? Will they add more? I think they could, but I don't know if they will. And I say all of that just because right now, you don't have very many positions that you are just in dire need of, right? You filled your quarterback spot. You got your running back. You filled the offensive line spot. Could you use more depth there? Absolutely. And I think if somebody is in the portal that is still being slept on, Indiana could go after him. Remember, the 4 playoff teams remaining still have a chance to enter, I guess, the 4 playoff teams players. Yeah, that's how you say that. They could enter the portal whenever their season is done, whether they lose in the semifinals or they lose in the national championship game. How many players will do that? I don't know. You've already seen players leave those teams and go somewhere else. Heck, an offensive lineman we picked up from Ohio State. Guys that aren't playing on those rosters have already done so. So I wouldn't get your hopes up in terms of, oh, maybe that starting offensive lineman for the Buckeyes will enter the portal or whatever, or Notre Dame or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's just not realistic. Not saying it can't happen. I'm saying don't keep your hopes up. So I just don't think Indiana is going to add anybody right now unless there's just some crazy player that Indiana can't pass up and they just want to come to Indiana, or whether it just makes sense. I mean, I think the situation would have to be perfect for Indiana to make another addition. The door's still open on that. I just don't see it happening right now, which leaves Indiana to what the spring window will bring, what the spring window will offer for Indiana after spring practice, because it's inevitable. We will have guys leave the team after spring practice. It will happen all over the country. The question will become a couple of things. One, how many players do leave? And two, how quickly can you replace them? And you still need safeties, I think. I still think you still need safeties. You could use a linebacker, maybe. You've just got to figure out who's going to be the partner next to Aiden Fisher on the field this fall, because my goodness, how big was it for the All-American to come back on the defensive side of the ball? You've got talent in there. You need somebody to emerge, if you will, but maybe you go get somebody. Maybe you go get a starter. Maybe you go get a depth piece at the linebacker position. I'm not too sure. You can use another offensive lineman. I've said that and will continue to say that. You can never have enough of them, especially in the portal era. Like, man, they're going to be everywhere. You can go pick up offensive linemen in the spring window, and you may lose some in the spring window off the offensive line, because you hope by that point, after spring practice, that a lot of your position battles seem to have already been won. I think offensive line is very important in that category. I think defensive line is very important in that category. But those are two positions, because there's so many names in there, there's so many bodies in there, you will see guys leave, which means you have to go replace them. And so Indiana's in a good spot. Again, a really good spot. I said it yesterday. This team did a really good job of analyzing the needs and filling those needs and satisfying what we wanted in the transfer portal. And overall, I think it was a really good success. It was a really good haul, great success in this winter portal window. Could we add one or two stragglers here and there? Maybe. But again, I don't see it happening. And if it does, then that's great. And I'll eat my words and be surprised, I guess. But I just don't see the aggression from Indiana right now, unless it just makes perfect sense. But the spring portal window, you better believe it. And the goal for the Hoosiers is to not lose big names. Keep the big ones that you have. I don't think you're going to lose anybody that just transferred in, but I'm talking guys that returned from 2024 who said and pledged they wanted to come back in 2025. It's inevitable that you're going to lose some, but you've got to keep those players. Indiana has 83 scholarship players right now. What will that number be when spring practice is over? When that portal window opens? Who knows? But Indiana will have to replace those, maybe go get another safety, another offensive lineman. I still think defensive line, again, still has to be beefed up just a hair, and then you just fill your needs at that point. You just say, all right, well, there goes a running back. Got to go get one. All right, well, there went one of our quarterbacks. Maybe we need to go get one. That's how you work in the spring portal window. And if Indiana does that, they're going to be just fine. So can more news be coming? Sure. But I wouldn't expect anything until after spring practice for Curt Cignetti and this Indiana football squad. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we're going to switch gears, get over to basketball, where Mike Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers host USC tonight for the very first time. We'll talk about this game, what it means for Indiana, plus the Big Ten standings, and how Indiana can continue to climb in bracketology. That's all coming up next, right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's helped me a ton to start this new year. So many subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of, get this, $500 million in canceled subscriptions alone. saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. I could use an extra $740, couldn't you? And the fact that we're paying that much in subscriptions we don't even use and don't even know that we're paying for is absurd. They helped me find several. I've canceled them, and I'm already saving money with Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here again, making this your go-to spot for everything Indiana, your first listen or your first watch every single day. And just a friendly reminder to you, this show is free every single day, Monday through Friday, bonus episodes during the week, bonus episodes on the weekends. So have your notifications turned on, whether you listen on audio, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or you watch on the YouTube side. You need to have those notifications turned on for when we have new episodes, and we post things on YouTube like poll questions, and we post reels and shorts and all sorts of things for you to be a part of this community. So we appreciate you being here, and I'm having a blast, and January is off to a hot start, and I think we can continue that here as the week and the month that goes on. For my audio listeners, really quickly, I'm asking that you are subscribed if you can, follow if you can, 5-star reviews if you can, and have that notification bell turned on. I don't want you to miss anything that we do at Locked On Hoosiers on your audio podcasting platforms. And for my people on YouTube, like these videos. I tell you all the time that it helps with the robot, whatever it is on YouTube. Liking and commenting helps that tremendously. So I know you've got thoughts on the portal. I need an overall grade from you. I need an overall grade on Indiana's transfer portal haul in the winter cycle. Let me know what that is down in the YouTube comments below, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Remember what I was asking and saying we could get to 4K before the start of the new year, and we crushed that goal like halfway through December? Well, we're almost at 4,300 now because of you, and that's just insane to think about. So we continue to climb, continue to grow, and we're growing like a weed, as the parents used to say. We're almost at 4,300 subscribers. So thank you so much for all your support right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Indiana hosts USC tonight inside of Assembly Hall. I've said it yesterday, and I'll say it again today. Still weird that this is a Big Ten matchup between the Hoosiers and the Trojans. But regardless, it is. And it's one that I think is very winnable for Indiana. Let's just say it like it is. This is a winnable game for Indiana. And we're coming off of what I think was one of our most impressive wins of the year over a Penn State team. Will they make the tournament? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But they're going to beat somebody, several somebodies this year. Penn State will. They already have, and they will continue to do that because of how talented they are. And that game on Sunday on the road at the Palestra there in Philly is an example of what Indiana can be in terms of a positive side and what we can be on a negative side. Here's what I mean by that. Indiana had a solid double-digit lead in the second half, using a 10-0 run to come out of the locker room of the second half and just put it on the Nittany Lions, right? That's what this team can be. Big-time shots, transition offense, forcing turnovers on defense, and just suffocating and putting their foot on your throat. That's what this Indiana team can be in terms of how good they can be. But then you saw them let that lead slip away. Penn State hung around. That's the side that Indiana can be as a bad team, turning the ball over, taking bad shots, stagnant offense, not getting back on defense, things like that let Penn State get back in the ballgame. But Indiana did something on Sunday that they haven't done in quite some time. They did close out the win. They just didn't do it in the way that we wanted them to by completely running away and commanding the last 10 or 12 minutes of that second half. Totally understand, and I'm right there with a lot of you who are frustrated with that. But folks, past teams would have lost that game completely. Past teams would have not gone on a 10-0 run out of the locker room, because how many slow starts did we see last year and even early this year to start the first half and to start the second half, it was always the opponent that would go on big-time runs, and then Indiana was climbing from behind the rest of the second 20 minutes. Instead, it was Indiana that did it this time against Penn State. And I say all of that because you can carry that into this game against USC tonight, who is just not all that good. I'll say it. They're not that good. USC's not. Does that mean that Indiana is just an unbeatable god that is going to roll over the Trojans and has nothing to worry about? No, absolutely not. This is Big Ten play. Look around the country. Look around the conference, man. It is brutal out there right now in the first week of January. And you start looking at what this USC team brings, names that you need to know. Desmond Claude is the guy that makes them go. He's the guard that averages 15 points a game. He plays 31 minutes per game, averages 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. Shoots 51% from the floor and 33% from behind the arc. He's the one who will have the ball in his hands for most of the time, okay? The guard, Desmond Claude, is the one you need to know. Also, Chibuzo Agbo is a guard who plays 31 minutes a game. He averages 13 points as well, 4 rebounds, 1 assist for he also averages a steal. So does Claude. So they're going to play pretty heavily on the guards, bringing it up the floor. We'll see how much full court pressure USC decides to run with tonight. But if they watch film on what Penn State did, I think they'll run a lot of it because they put Miles Rice, Cannon Carlisle, Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal. They put those guys, Penn State did, put them in stressful situations and force them to handle the ball and make good decisions. So I expect USC to do a lot of that tonight. Also, Josh Cohen is somebody who is one you need to know. Terrence Williams, again, he broke his wrist, so he's not active for USC. So Josh Cohen is the one that has stepped up in that forward/center role for this USC team. Averages about 10 points a game, does average 3 rebounds, 1.5 assists. Here's what you need to know. USC doesn't shoot the ball very well. Here's their team numbers. Are you ready for this? 47% from the floor, 75% from the free throw line, and just 34% from downtown. And USC is very prone, this team in particular, is very prone to shooting bad shots or not good shots. And what I mean is contested 2s, long 3s, early in the shot clock, running shots, right? I mean, just untraditional or unconditional. Untraditional. We'll go with that. Untraditional shots that USC will take, even if it's open, right? In basketball, for those of you that have watched it and covered it or whatever, cheered for it for a long, long time, just because you're open doesn't mean it's a good shot. And USC is very prone to take a lot of those type of shots, and they're not scared to shoot it. That's what's crazy is they don't make a lot of them, but they will take a lot of them. Open, contested, doesn't really matter. That's what USC is going to do. So if you're Indiana, where Malik Renew will not play in this game, you have Umar Ballo down low, you still have Mackenzie Mbako, Luke Goody, Langdon Hatton coming off the bench, and then your guard play will be important here. Indiana has more talent, and I think if you play the way that you played against Penn State, if you do that against USC, you're going to be just fine. And I think there's a trend in this game that I haven't talked about with Indiana for a while that I think finally is coming back to life that applies to this matchup between the Hoosiers and the Trojans tonight. I want to tell you more about that when we come back, plus current Big Ten standings, bracketology, where Indiana is in the mix. How a win tonight could bump them up just a little bit. We'll have all of that coming up for you on the final segment right here on Locked On Hoosiers. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here again, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. And want to remind you that we have so many other shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On College Basketball, Locked On College Football, Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman, former IU grad, hosts that show. So be sure that you are checking out all of those shows on your audio podcasting platforms or on YouTube as well. Just type them in, Locked On Big Ten, Locked On College Football, Locked On College Basketball. Be sure you type it in that you're from Locked On Hoosiers. They want to see those in the comments that you are representing over here from the Locked On Hoosiers show. Indiana and USC coming up tonight inside of Assembly Hall. And I said there's a narrative about this Indiana team, about this game in particular, that I've said in the past. I said a lot in non-conference play about this team, about a game in particular, that I think applies to this one this evening. This game is all about Indiana. It is. It's all about Indiana. I don't think, legitimately, I don't think if Indiana plays their best basketball and USC plays their best basketball, that the Trojans are good enough to come on the road and beat this Indiana team. If both teams play at their best, that's a huge point that I want to emphasize so that way it doesn't get taken incorrectly here. If both teams play their best, USC is not good enough to beat Indiana. But if the Hoosiers play sloppy, play slow, play lazy, stagnant, turn the ball over, can't make shots, go 2 of 30 from downtown, right? Because they think they're hot and they might not be. Then USC, if they come in and run their offense and knock down some of those tough shots I was talking about a minute ago, then yeah, they could absolutely come in here and get a big win. Could USC? They're 9-5 overall. They're 13th right now in the Big Ten, sitting at 1-2 overall. They lost to Oregon, they lost to Cal, and they beat Washington, and they lost to Michigan 85-74. That's a common theme right now. That Michigan team's good. I told you, watch out for the Wolverines, didn't I? They were my dark horse this year in the Big Ten, so that pick is looking pretty good. But USC on the road at Indiana, then they travel to Illinois this weekend. That's brutal, man. But overall, I do believe that tonight's game is about Indiana. Play your game. Take what you've done in the past two, right, against Rutgers and against Penn State, and build on that. Man, you're on a 4-game winning streak. You haven't done that since non-conference play. And then your win over Minnesota. And this feels good, right? This feels like a good 4-game win streak, especially with back-to-back wins over Big Ten foes. Are Rutgers and Penn State at the top of the Big Ten? No. Rutgers is currently at the second to last spot in the Big Ten. I don't care. Wins over the Big Ten are crucial, especially on the road like we did against Penn State. And speaking of those Big Ten standings, we'll give you an update on those going into tonight's games, okay? Going into the Wednesday, January 8th games around the Big Ten. Michigan and Michigan State sit atop of the Big Ten. Michigan 4-0, Michigan State 3-0. How about this? Your Indiana Hoosiers. We're currently third in the Big Ten standings at 3-1 in the conference, followed by Illinois and Purdue. We'll run through these quickly here. Bunch of teams sitting at 2-2 in conference play. Oregon, Washington, Nebraska, Penn State, Iowa, UCLA, and Ohio State. 7 teams are at 2-2 in the conference. USC is 1-2, the team that Indiana plays tonight. Maryland, Washington, Northwestern, Rutgers, all 1-3, and Minnesota is 0-4. So there's an update on what the Big Ten standings look like. I told you I wanted to tell you about bracketology as well. This is from Joe Lunardi on ESPN. Several different sites that you can look at as of January 7th. Okay, so this was yesterday. I think yesterday morning it was. So Tuesday morning before the Tuesday night games, obviously before the Wednesday night games, and so on and so forth. But you look at what the Big Ten has right now. We have 11 teams making the NCAA tournament. That's incredible. Behind the SEC that's got 13, which that's just an insane number. 11 is an insane number. 11 of 18 is really, really good for the Big Ten. Indiana's not one of those. Indiana's not one of those 11 teams as of right now. According to Joe Lunardi, we are one of the first 4 out. We're technically the 3rd team out of the NCAA tournament by teams for the Big Ten. Or I guess bubble teams for the Big Ten is Penn State. Penn State is the only other bubble team along with Indiana from the Big Ten, but you have teams like Michigan State, like Ohio State, like Wisconsin. They're all in the tournament right now, and those are teams that Indiana will have a chance to play. USC, they're not a tournament team. So does a win tonight boost your resume? No, not really. Does it hurt your resume? Yeah, absolutely. USC, this is not a quad 1 game. This is a quad 2, possibly quad 3, depending on how this team plays out. Indiana's better than them tonight. You're much better than them tonight. I think Umar Ballo has a big game. Your guards have to have a big game. And I hope you continue to play the 4-out, 1-in set that we saw against the Nittany Lions. Let Umar Ballo go to work. And I said it earlier, and I think this is important too as we wrap up here. Indiana has shot the ball from three very well over the last 2 games compared to what they've done in the last several years, right? They've shot the ball well from behind the arc, and I think that's probably the reason they've won these basketball games. But if the shots aren't falling from out there tonight, for whatever reason, whether it's USC's defense, the shots aren't falling, the cold outside, whatever the case may be, if you are not making shots, and I'm talking to the entire Indiana team, quit shooting the ball. Cannon Carlisle, I'm looking at you, man. Love you. You're a great player. But if you're not making shots, quit shooting the ball. But the flip side of that is if we continue to shoot the ball well, we need to shoot more. Mbako, Galloway, those types of players, Goody, need to shoot. I think Miles Rice as well. I think you could throw him in the mix too, and would love to see Rice have a good game. Would love to see Carlisle get back into a rhythm here. I think Galloway needs to shoot the ball more in general, whether it's those driving layups that he's good at, pull-up jumpers from the elbow, or getting open looks from behind the arc. He is an X factor for this team all season long. But the Hoosiers have the Trojans coming up tonight. USC and Indiana, 2 massive logos around college athletics, and they'll do battle tonight inside of Assembly Hall. I think Indiana wins. I'll pick the Hoosiers. I think we are like a 6.5-point favorite according to our friends at FanDuel. And I say we'll cover it. Sure, why not? I'll take Indiana to win. I'll take Indiana to cover. And if we get a lead, keep a lead. And if for whatever reason we're behind, let's get over that pretty quickly because Indiana's flat out just the better team. But as I've said, if you don't play your best, this is the Big Ten, and anybody can get you on any given day. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, appreciate you being here and being an everydayer, whether you're new here, whether you're coming back for your second, third, fourth time, or whether you truly are one of my everydayers. I really appreciate you and your support. We'll talk more about Indiana and USC, the final result coming up on tomorrow's show. Plus, we'll continue breaking down Indiana's portal class and what the rest of the offseason holds as spring practice is closer than you think for Curt Cignetti and Indiana football. We'll have all that coming up for you on tomorrow's show. So until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.